everyone. I am so excited to be introducing Dr. Jared Scaron from Connecticut. Dr. Skowron is a biomedical autism specialist. He has been in private practice for 15 years as a biomedical physician, helping children with autism and ADHD. He is a leader in the field of autism treatment. I feel so privileged to be speaking to him today. He created the autism vitamin company, Spectrum Awakening. He co-founded the Pediatric Association of Naturopathic Physicians, and he lectures internationally on natural therapies to treat autism. He serves on the medical advisory board of Autism Hope Alliance, this is now in America, Natural Partners, Chemo and Crayons, and Natural Practitioner magazine. He regularly appears on NBC as a medical contributor. He is the author of Amazon bestseller, that is amazing, 100 Natural Remedies for Your Child, and he has helped thousands of children get better over many years. I follow his podcasts, and I am so excited to be sharing our discussion with you today because his knowledge of chemistry and the metabolic imbalances that we see in our kids and how to correct those makes me excited. So, Dr. Skowron, it's very excited to be speaking to you today. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I am so excited to reach out to all the families that you know, and our world is becoming so much smaller with technology that even though I'm in the US, I get to help people all over the world, and I love it. And whether it's my clinic and we have these telemedicine appointments where I can talk to families one-on-one and help their child, or whether it's our vitamin line that we created 8 years ago specifically to help kids with autism. And now we ship this internationally, and we also have international distributors in Europe and in India, and we're trying to open up more distributors across the world. It's been so awesome over the past couple decades to help kids. I mean, my life is helping kids, and I love it because it works. And I don't think there's any greater mission in life than to help children.
We are so fortunate that you help parents internationally. Being in South Africa, I recommend to parents that they consult with you. And I also often speak to parents in countries in Africa. And I know that there are a lot of parents globally that are consulting with you. And that's amazing because it can feel intimidating and challenging to a parent to think, okay, I've got this child with autism. I live in Kenya. How am I going to get help? So to have you available to consult internationally, to be able to access your products, it's just really amazing. Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask you a very, very simple but complex question, actually. What is autism?
Wow, we're starting with a great one. So let me answer this question in two ways. One way is the outside, and one way is the inside. So, when our kids get diagnosed with autism, at least here in the US, it's a very observational process. We see kids, and we know that kids are supposed to develop certain skills at certain ages. You usually walk around 12 months, and babbling starts at a certain time, and talking starts, and throwing a ball. So we know where children are supposed to develop certain skills. When you have kids with autism, those skills are not developed at the appropriate age. So they are very delayed, and they may come later in life, or they may not come at all, just depending on how we can intervene. For most kids, it's very, I don't have a good word for this, but it's very much of a delay of your mental cognitions, your intelligence, kind of the higher level kind of skills like talking and, thinking and conceptualizing things and expressing. So it's all about that interconnectivity that's not developed. Usually the physicalness develops. The kids are walking and running and throwing balls and that kind of, and obviously we can have low muscle tone in certain kids, but the physical body tends to develop. It's this advanced level brain that's having a big problem with development. So that's the outside. On the inside, and this is the part where I work, autism is a medical condition. It is not a behavioral choice. It's not a type of parenting. It is a child who inside there's something going wrong. There's something that isn't connecting in their brain, and we're here to help. And treating autism medically is very complicated because there's so many moving parts. Okay, we've got the genetics that we're born with. We've got a world that's filled with more toxins that can get into a developing brain and cause problems. We know things like lead will cause problems with intellect and developing. So there's all these toxins in the world, and then we've got autoimmunity involved, and we've got hormones involved, and we've got brain chemistry involved, and we've got gut health involved, and we've got infections involved, and all of a sudden something like autism is not a very simple medical issue. It's incredibly complex. And that's why we're still in the middle of figuring this out. Science and doctors like myself and other doctors around the world who specialize specifically in autism. This is all we do. This is all we work on. We're working on figuring it out. And so we do have great diagnostics. We've got great treatment. But at the end of the day, it's a child who is, for some reason, and we got to figure this reason out medically. Why is that child not developing on an average schedule compared to other kids?
So this is what I want to take away from your definition of what autism is. And it's so incredibly special to hear you define autism, because what I loved is you said autism is a medical condition. Many parents receive the diagnosis of autism and they walk away from the doctor's office not knowing that. So thank you for sharing that, firstly. Secondly, what I feel is so profound is that you said that we are here to help and we're still figuring it out. I am so grateful that you are figuring it out, because I speak to parents who get told the child has autism, accept it, make him comfortable, and this is the end of the road. And you telling me about the gut, you're telling me about health, you're telling me about infections. So I'm very excited to hear that autism is a medical condition. And now, is it then treatable?
Yes. The short answer is yes, we can treat it. And we can treat it successfully. And this is what we've been doing in my practice for almost 20 years. And you know what? I don't think it matters what country you're in, because here in the States, and you in South Africa, and I talk to people all over the world, most of the time, are kind of, you go to your doctor, you go to your pediatrician, and your pediatrician probably never learned about autism. They probably were not taught it in school. They probably know very little about it. And they are in their practice seeing 30, 40, 50 kids a day, just going so fast. And they have a child here who is delayed and they don't know much about it. So all they can offer is their personal knowledge rather than their medical knowledge. Here's my personal knowledge with autism, because I was never taught this in school. And they say, I think these kids are just going to be like this. So good luck. Sorry. Maybe they'll refer you to therapy. Maybe they'll refer you to some kind of a behavioral intervention type of things. But again, even here in the States, I come across such a wall of ignorance with pediatricians that don't know what is out there. They don't know the science, they don't know the research, they don't know the potential, they don't know the hope, because in my practice, we help kids talk, we help kids understand, we help kids connect with you, we help kids with their medical conditions. You're sleeping, you've got all this constipation, you have seizures, you have pandas. We can help kids start to develop. We can help kids on their road to recovery. So every day we get kids talking more, we get kids happier more, we get kids not screaming, we get kids who can sleep, we get kids who will interact with you instead of sitting there in the corner. or the ones that are jumping off your couches and swinging from your chandeliers 24/7. So these are the kids we can help. And I don't blame the other doctors for ignorance. They were never taught. So look, don't ask me to fix your car. I know nothing about what's going on there. But I want everybody to know that there are specialists out there that can help you. So instead of saying there's nothing you can do, I think the answer should be there's something you can do. And here's somebody who knows a whole lot about it. Just like if somebody came into my office and said, I just got diagnosed with cancer, I'd say, I don't know about cancer, but I'm not going to tell you there's nothing to do about it because I don't know. I'm going to say, go see somebody who does know.
What I love about watching your podcast, and at the end of our discussion, you can let parents know, where they can follow you on Facebook, and we'll also put that on the podcast details. But what I love about watching your podcast is that every time you start a topic, you will actually hold up the research paper. Now, I'm a lawyer by profession. I have a legal background. And we talk about evidence-based treatment. And so I love that you go to the research paper. And I agree with you. I don't think the doctors, they definitely haven't read the research. And so if you haven't read the research, you can't really give an opinion because you don't know, you don't have experience with it. And I'm so excited for the parents to hear this discussion. The more we speak, the more excited I become. But you said we can treat autism successfully, and we have been doing so for 20 years. Guys, can you see the fireworks going off behind me? Because, for some parents listening today, they weren't told that. They don't know that. The fact that we can share that message today makes me very happy. Now, most often the child has a period of normal development and then we see regression, right? So I often say okay, so there was normal development and then he regressed, right? Like nothing happened, oh no, you must just accept it. I mean, come on. Where can parents start looking for answers?
Great question. So whenever I talk to families, and so when I have a medical visit with a telemedical visit with them, one-on-one, what's important is the story of the child. And so I ask all the families, and I want everybody listening to, if you were to write a biography about your child, if you were just kind of write, a 1 or 2 page story about here is their life, then we tend to start with one of 2 different categories. The most common category is what you said, is the regression. I've got a child and they're looking at me and they're babbling and they're saying mama and they're saying dada and they're making eye contact and they're interested and engaged in the world. And then one day, gone, disappears. And they're like, my child's not looking at me, my child's not talking to me, my child's got all these pooping issues. A lot of the kids will have diarrhea during their regression. And you say to yourself, well, what happened to my kid? Are they going to come back? Should I just kind of wait and see? And, you get to the pediatrician's office, not to harp on the pediatricians, but they're your medical go-to. And they say, oh, he's just a slow developer. There's a couple languages in your house. Just wait and see. Just wait, just wait, just wait. And all of a sudden, the time has gone on and there's still no development. You're still flatlined. So that's the majority of kids, this regression. And there's medical reasons for that. Then there's another smaller subset, which is about 10% of the kids, where you just never had the regression from the beginning. So, you never had the development from the beginning. So you have these kids who, my kid never talked, or my kid never made eye contact, or my kid was never interested in toys or these things. He just kind of sat there. And I say he because boys are much more common with autism, but obviously this is boys or girls. And so we've got that subset of kids, and the kids who, and this is why the story is important, especially that first 12 to 24 months, the kids who have not developed, who did, develop regression, you don't have that regression, the kids who kind of were slow from the beginning, they were often born with a genetic problem. So there are genetic conditions that are rare that you can be born with, and a very common one that people know is Down syndrome. Okay, you could be born with a genetic condition, Down syndrome. Now, Down syndrome is not autism. Autism is not Down syndrome. They're very different, but I'm just using it as an example that most people know. You can be born with a genetic condition, And that genetic condition is causing your developmental delay. And so that's a small group of kids. And we need to look at their genetics and we need to figure that out and treat that differently than the children who have regressed. And then we look for that cause. And again, back to your story and back to your history. What happened at that moment? And there are many different things that can make that regression happen. But if we can figure out, hey, this is probably the cause, this is probably the event that happened at that time, that will be our core of treatment.
Wow. I think, again, what I want to stress is what you said, which was that there are medical reasons for regression. And then I can speak from experience. My oldest son had a period of normal development and then regressed. And again, I think it's so comforting for parents to hear that there is actually something that we can do about this, that there is Dr. Skowron who we can speak to and explain the history of the child and work, with you to kind of try to establish, well, what caused that regression. Now, the parents listening today, they go like, okay, fine, I've heard about this thing called biomedical treatment, but I don't know where to get started. Where do they get started?
Well, it's a different journey for everybody. And there's a couple different pathways that you can try. And the term biomedical is these terms for the type of medicine that we use with kids with autism, it kind of changes every decade. And probably 15 years ago was the DAN doctor. It was a group called Defeat Autism Now. So you had the DAN protocols. And then you got functional medicine, and now there's biomedical medicine. These terms are changing all the time. But what it basically means is you're not treating a disease name. Okay, so let's say I had asthma. Okay, I want to help you with your breathing, but I'm not going to treat asthma, quote unquote. I'm going to treat the reason you have asthma, because there's multiple reasons. Okay, so I may have asthma because I have allergies, or because of this, or because of that. And so instead of just saying, oh, I need an inhaler of steroids or albuterol to help me breathe, I want to get deeper as to why this happened. And if I find the why, I can treat the biology. So the biomedical is biology, medical combined, and I'm medically treating the biology of the cause of the symptoms. And our society is so not cut and paste, but very quick acting. Like I have high cholesterol. Well, you need this medication. Or I have high blood pressure. You need this medication. It's very superficial. It's not digging deep into what's the biology, why is this happening, and what can we do about it. So that's kind of an overarching term of biomedical. And as I mentioned before, there are so many moving parts in autism. And I wish I have this picture of a flower that I had made with 7 different medical parts of autism. You can have an autoimmune component. So some of our kids have autoimmune encephalitis, where the body is attacking their brain. Many times we have alterations in brain chemistry. There can be problems with your hormones. There can be problems with your genetics. There can be problems with your mitochondria. There can be problems with toxicity. There can be problems with your gut and food allergies and intestinal infections. So I'm kind of laying out those different biological processes to kind of step back for a family and say, okay, I want to do biomedical. I don't know what that vague term means, but I want to start somewhere. And we can answer that question by saying there's easy places to start and there's more thorough places to start. A more thorough place would be getting together with a biomedical doctor. Here in the States, there's an organization called MAPS, M-A-P-S, and MAPS has kind of taken over for the DAN group. And MAPS is basically a group of medical doctors that are educating other health professionals to treat autism biomedically. So find yourself a really good specialist. If you want to be thorough, find a specialist, get all your testing done. Let's test the genetics. Let's test the brain. Let's test the autoimmune. Let's test everything and treat what we find medically. Just if you went to your doctor and said, oh boy, I'm tired, and they'd run some blood tests and say, oh, you have anemia. We're going to treat your anemia. That's going to fix your fatigue. So that's the thorough answer. Go get a good biomedical MAPS doctor who knows what they're doing, whether it's me, whether it's somebody else, and dig deep. if you want to start basic, I would say the most common things that are done are trying to eat a healthier diet. And, eating a healthier diet can be something as simple as eliminating processed foods, eliminating sugar, eliminating candy, eliminating soda. I know different countries have different qualities of foods. I think our food here in the US is horrific compared to other nations. But be that as it may, can we clean up our diet and have more of a whole food diet? A lot of people will do gluten-free. A lot of people will do dairy-free. A lot of people will do more extreme diets. And the problem with that is there is no one size fits all with diets. Everybody's different. And you may hear stories about saying, oh boy, I went gluten-free, dairy-free, and my child started talking, which can happen. And you try it and nothing works. All right, well, that was frustrating. So there is no one size fits all for that thing. But diet is often a very simple place where a lot of families start. Of course, a lot of our kids are really picky eaters and they're not going to try different foods, and you don't want to risk losing a food that you do have that's healthy. So, diets can be a struggle. Other places that we can also start, which I think is quite helpful, if you're looking at vitamin supplements, places a lot of people will start are somewhere like a multivitamin, perhaps some kind of omega or fish oil supplement. I think one vitamin that helps more of my kids than any other vitamin is something called folinic acid, and so much scientific research behind folinic acid. It's helped with language, it's helped behavior, it helped with mental development. So I think those are good, safe places for most people to begin. Again, we can go very thorough, get yourself set up with a doctor, do the full analysis, or hey, I want to start somewhere. Can I play with my food? Can I add a couple vitamins? Start there and then kind of baby step into bigger things.
So, again, I love that you say, what's the biology and why is it happening? Why? When my son David was diagnosed with autism, I wanted to know why. As a parent, he had normal development and all of a sudden he regressed. I wanted to know why. So I am so glad that parents can consult with you to try and unpack the why, number one. Number two, I had autism knock on my door twice. So my oldest son, David, has autism. My youngest had the best outcome, and he did lose his diagnosis of autism. He did recover. And the first thing that helped him was actually folate, so the folinic acid that you were talking about. Also, the omega-3 helped him immediately. The multivitamin helped him immediately. So I definitely think that, as you said, you can go and run a whole lot of tests, but if you kind of want to just wait a bit with that, you can also just get started with a good multivitamin, omega, folinic acid. It's like a good foundation. That, I absolutely agree with you. And I've seen that work in my younger son. My older son has been a lot more complicated. David didn't just respond, and every kid is an individual. Now, vitamin and mineral deficiencies are common in children with autism, and they can cause many symptoms, right? So I actually enjoyed reading your ebook, The Supplement Guide to a Better Child. I read it and I read it and I read it. You've created nutritional supplements that are specifically designated to support normal behavior, focus, attention, mood, language, development, overall well-being for children with autism and children with ADHD. Tell us more about the Spectrum Awakening products. And I've used of your products for both my children, and it worked. My youngest son, he was presenting as a child with ADHD, put him onto your products, and the teacher actually asked me if I gave him Ritalin. And I laughed. No, I didn't give him Ritalin. I actually gave him the Spectrum Awakening range of products. So tell us more about your range.
Well, first off, I'm so glad it helped. That's why we do this. We just want kids to get better. But I love what you said, because that's how we as a world are being influenced to think that pharmaceuticals are the only answer. You helped your child had improvements, and your teacher said that must have been a drug, because that, that's how the pharmaceutical industry as a world industry is influencing our thought process. There's improvements in someone, it must have been from a pharmaceutical, when there's so many other things out there that can help us. So why do we immediately go, that's the only answer that can improve our life? And it's kind of a struggle when we're trying to look at other options other than pharmaceuticals, because right now there's no pharmaceutical intervention for autism. Okay, and if there was, I'd be using it, but there's not. There's no pharmaceutical out there that's been developed. They're like, oh, it's going to help my kid speak. It's just not there. So when we treat biology, or let me kind of get to the answer by just kind of talking about my story. Like I want my families to give me their child's story. My story in my practice was, here I am helping kids, and there's no drugs out there. So what can we use? Well, there's a lot of different nutritional vitamin supplements that can help, because as you said, a lot of kids are deficient. A lot of kids aren't eating a good diet. They're not getting their big nutrients like healthy fats. Like, that's why we need omegas. They're not getting their big nutrients like protein. A lot of kids are just eating carbohydrates or just eating pasta or crackers. They don't get that protein. So those big things are missing, but then also the small things are missing, different vitamins, different minerals, etc. So I was, giving those to my patients, and they were working. Great. That's what we want. I'm giving stuff. It's working. Our kids are talking. Our kids are making eye contact. Our kids are behaving. Then we started to get into struggles with not with the families, but with the whole process, because, all right, I want to use these vitamins, and all of a sudden I got like 10 things in front of me, and they don't taste good. And it's a real pain to do this. I feel like I'm waking up every morning and I'm a pharmacist or a chemist trying to combine all these things together. And it's taking like so much time out of my day. And I've got one kid screaming and one kid doing this and a husband doing that. So I finally took it upon myself about 8 years ago to make my own. I said, okay, these things are working out there, but there's no good brand, there's no good company that gets our kids and understands our kids. And I see this with other companies now that are kind of cropping up, one-hit wonder companies. They're like, oh, we've got this for autism, you should do it. And, I wonder where their knowledge and understanding comes from. Have you did you just read a research paper like, this helps with autism, try this? Versus being in the trenches with the families, having used these things, knowing what works, knowing what side effects you get, knowing what they taste like, because our kids are not going to swallow pills. So 8 years ago, we started our own vitamin line, Spectrum Awakening, and the goal being getting all of these nutrients, all of these vitamins, all these minerals, all these amino acids, whatever, into one bottle. So you're using one bottle instead of 10 bottles, making it tasteless. I'm not about adding flavors. Our kids are so sensitive. I don't want to make it taste good. I want to make it taste less. We can't do that all the time, but we try. And making things as powders. Our kids aren't swallowing pills. And making things gluten-free and dairy-free, which are essential for our kids. So many kids that do gluten-free, dairy-free diets. You get a product out of the market, who knows what's in it? Who knows how it's been, processed or analyzed or safety tested? So we kind of developed Spectrum Awakening with that thought process in mind. I want to help my families better. And so it started with 3 vitamins. So we had a line of 3 products, and now it's developed into, I want to say 50 different products. And next, in 2 weeks, the beginning of April of 2022, we're launching another 15 products. So we're just adding more and more to our line. People are asking for things. People say, hey, you don't have a sulforaphane product. Okay, we got a good one now. And, DMG or this or that. So we're always constantly trying to expand our line, offering things that work, offering things that are high quality, and offering things that are safe. So, yeah.
When I speak to parents, I always say to parents, you can't just go and walk into any store and buy a bottle of vitamins off the shelf. you have to buy products that have been formulated by a medical doctor who actually understands the makeup of autism. So I'm so glad that you gave us that background to Spectrum Awakening. Heal the gut to heal the brain. Why does autism start in the gut?
Great question. You know, our gut is the main source of interaction with the world. Okay, how do I interact with that world around me? I've got all this stuff inside, and you know, how do I interact with that world? The majority of it is with our gut. It's with our intestines. We take food and we put it in here, and we interact with it. We digest it. We metabolize it. We absorb it. We poop it out. Okay, we're basically one big long donut. You know, I put food in here and it goes through a tube, and then it goes out to the toilet, and all this stuff gets to interact back and forth with it. You know, probably the other point where we interact a lot with the world is breathing. All right, I breathe in air, and things get absorbed and things get deposited, and I breathe out air. But other than that, there's not a whole lot where we really tangibly interact with that world. So the gut is so important. And for whatever reason, you know, at that point of regression, so let's go back to those regression kids, which are most common. At that point of regression, you have a lot of inflammation. A medical condition starts at that moment of regression. And, you know, let me use a metaphor of spraining your ankle. So I'm walking down the stairs and I sprain my ankle. What happens? It swells up. It gets big. It gets red. It gets painful. The body is trying to fix this. And that's what's happening in the gut. Okay, some event occurs, inflammation begins, and all of a sudden, there's a lot of inflammation in our gut. That changes our ability to digest foods. That changes our ability to absorb nutrients. That could lead to something called leaky gut due to a lot of inflammation. That also affects the immune system, specifically in the gut, not the immune system of your full body and your blood and such, but just in the gut. And so now all of a sudden, we are more predisposed to having intestinal infections. That can be yeast, that can be mold, that can be bacteria, that can be viruses, that can be parasites. I've seen it all. So now all of a sudden I go from having a kid who's trying to eat their foods, oh, and never mind, let's add on food allergies. If you've got a food allergy, of course, dairy is one of the most common ones. You know, your kid drinks, you know, formula and they vomit it. All of a sudden you've got the allergies causing more inflammation. So going back to that sprained ankle, I had a wonderful ankle walking down the stairs, and now it's swelled up like a watermelon, and I can't use it. And my gut is swelled up like a watermelon. I mean, how many of your kids have a big bloated belly? Okay.
So many of the kids have a bloated belly. My son had a bloated belly, and you're right, there's gut inflammation. I always tell parents, inflammation equals fire. We have brain inflammation, we have gut inflammation. Now we're starting to talk about the why.